Hey, welcome everybody. On today's show, is AI dismantling SaaS as we speak? That's the topic of Greg Isenberg's recent X post. And, it got this whole DOS crew really thinking from, today's AI workflows to tomorrow's agents to the future where software, as Greg said, it might even become invisible. The barrier to creating on-demand AI solutions is, really crumbling. And the modern business person is starting to get crafty with their near perfect coding tools and their ability to spin up like kind of whatever solution they want really in seconds. So what is SaaS 2.0? Which industries are going to benefit from it? Which ones are going to struggle to keep up? That's what we're talking about today. That's the topic. Today is March 13th, 2025. This is the Daily AI Show. Thanks for joining us live. Thanks to everybody already in the comments. And with me today, we have a special guest co-host, our first. So let me go around the room here. We have Andy, we have Beth, Carl, Junmi, I'm Brian, and joining us today for the first time is Ann Murphy. So welcome, Ann. How are you?
I'm great. Thanks for having me. I'm so excited to be here today. Thank you for having me, and hey to everyone in the audience.
Yeah, we're super excited about having you too. We started to tease this a couple days ago. Jen is already saying, OMG, hi, Ann. Welcome to the DOS Squares. So you got some love already in the people who know you in the comments. Yeah, I would think a lot of people, if you're on LinkedIn, if you're watching what's going on TikTok and some other places, you have probably seen Ann in other places. And you could certainly talk as we're going through the show today about what you do, but wanted to welcome you to the show. This is something we've been working on for a really long time to bring in a variety of different guest co-hosts. And every time we talked about it internally, I think we always said, like Ann, like we'll use like Ann. And luckily you said yes to it. So the person we had in mind is the very first person we wanted to have join us for today's show, and hopefully many more in the future was you. So we're really, really happy you're here. Okay, so let's dive into the topic today. Carl, you're the one that brought this to the group, and so I'd love to maybe kick it off with you. What we can do in the meantime too is while you're talking, I'm going to bring up Greg Isenberg's X post, because I really think that's there's a lot of meat in that post, and I'd love for you to just kind of talk about what inspired you, and I'll bring that up on screen here.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, welcome, man. Awesome to have you here. And so what got me thinking about this was, so from 2012 to 2016, I ran my own SaaS. So I kind of knew the typical way that it kind of, how you grow and how you could potentially exit, right? And then worked in SaaS again from 2020 to 2024, right? To 2023, 24. And in the typical way you get is, you get some seed funding, angel investor to help you get going. Then you kind of grow. Then you go out and raise some more funds, and maybe potentially you get a Series A, grow, raise some more funds, Series B, raise some more funds, Series C. Hopefully you become a unicorn, like there's a hope, and then hopefully you can exit, and the dream is either grow to something like a Meta, or you become wealthy and you start over again, right? That's a very typical dream. The only thing though is that's not the case for tons and tons of companies. And for us, we sold, but we were heavily in debt. So you're like, oh, the amount looks amazing. But like, no. We don't get barely any of that, because that pays off the debt, that pays off our investors. And then you sign certain things. When you actually go with a VC, you are now propelled, like literally forced to grow. Sometimes grow to the detriment of you. You shouldn't be growing that big. Right? You shouldn't be growing that at that size, because there's a lot of, you get into tech debt, you can't keep up with either the demand, or there is no demand, and it end up you spend 60% of your budgets to the altar of Google and Meta, because that's just like, how do we get customers? Well, you advertise and spend money on salespeople. So that's kind of the typical. But with AI now, think of all the tools, everything that we're getting on a regular basis, right? You just talked about Manus. We have Lovable, we have Bolt, we have all the tools, and we have the ability to automate, right? Whether it's business automations, AI automations, it doesn't matter. So I always thought the disruption isn't going to be coming from the established companies. No matter what Agentforce, Salesforce tells you, no matter what some of these more established companies are thinking that they can perpetuate, like, or be the disruptors, I don't think so, especially for a lot of the other industries, because there's a lot of IT, there's a lot of legal, there's a lot of hurdles that people have to do, more risk averse to using AI tools to in turn help them become more efficient. I've seen it. We visit so many businesses, and there's a mantra: crawl, walk, run, and I hate it. I hate it because it's like, yeah, it kind of makes sense, but dude, this is not something you want to be crawling around. So that's that's what that's what's across the industries. Thing is, though, any of these smaller startups, smaller company startups that don't have those layers, bureaucratic layers, or they just don't care, and their whole operations is centered around not the VC grow. Like, let's take SaaS for example. VC grow, that typical hamster wheel. Now you've got, like, hey, why don't we bootstrap it? We can just use AI, and a team of 10, 5 can compete against a team of 50, 100, 200, especially if you have 10 Manus or 10 operators running at the same time for 3 people. What can you possibly do? And in 3 months and in 6 months, guess what? They're better. In a year, even better. So that's why what Greg Isenberg actually was talking about. So that makes sense. Now, there's a lot of different elements there. If you ever ran your own SaaS or worked in SaaS, you kind of know it's not that easy, but we're getting to that point.
Yeah. Anybody? Jump on that. It was so good. You left everybody speechless, Carl. Yeah, I do want to call out Greg's 3 phases that he mentions. And I threw it up on screen really quick, but in case people, are just listening to us in the podcast. So basically he says, it's a great X post. We put it in the chat. So definitely go read it. There's a lot there, but I'm going to quickly summarize. He's like, here's how I see it playing out. Phase 1 now. AI is a co-pilot. This is what we're seeing currently right now. Co-pilot for developers, Gamma for presentations, Harvey for legal research, so on and so forth. Phase 2, next 12 to 18 months, the agent invasion, AI moves from co-pilot to autonomous operator, right? And we're already starting to see that, and we're seeing hints and really niche examples of where that's starting to already come to play. They're replacing workers that can fully operate existing software on your behalf. Then, and he said there, the dam breaks when someone can say, analyze our Q2 performance rather than clicking through Tableau. If you don't know what Tableau is, it's one of many different data analytics tools. When I used to work in business intelligence before where I work now at Scaled, we worked with tools like, Looker, that was bought by Google, Tableau, obviously. There's a huge one with, oh man, the name's going right out of my head, but ThoughtSpot was another one of them. So there's a lot of these analytics tools, and yeah, you would have to go in there and kind of know what you're looking for, but it's like being able to just speak out loud and have automatically whatever it is you're looking for, near perfect or perfect data representations without actually having to use those tools. And then lastly, he says, phase 3, wasn't there a phase 3? Why am I missing it? Phase 3, 2 to 3 years. Software invisibility. The final phase happens when the agents bypass the human interfaces altogether, which is, I think, is what you're kind of talking about, Carl, right? Like this idea of zooming right past an agent force from Salesforce or, HubSpot's AI agent or insert SaaS companies, internal built AI agent. And you've been saying this a lot on the show, Carl. And we've been talking about it, is like, well, hold on a second. Is it AI agents talking to their built-in AI agents, or are we just going to circumvent them completely? And it's just going to be my AI agent is already good enough to go get whatever API information I need from your service, and that's it. I don't need your other SaaS products. I just literally need to be able to connect to my raw data in whatever ways it is. So anyway, that's his sort of 3 phases. It's a really good post. I really, really truncated that. So please go look at the whole thing to get the whole idea. And then Carl, you were also talking about the Y Combinator. And so we could talk about that as well. But
so one of the things that I want to like jump on the 3 phases from is when we hear that, right, like first phase, second phase, third phase, they all have equal weight, and it seems like they're all going to last the same amount of time. And that is not true. That's not true just in general, but it's also really not true in terms of AI capability and then AI adoption, right? So this first phase may last, may sort of feel underground unless you're in the AI bubble. And then you're like, wow, no, I can totally do these other things. The second phase feels like it's an awareness kind of thing. And the third phase, I believe, is where the differentiation happens. Adoption goes really high for a small number of people, and it stays steady for the rest of that company. Let's just use Salesforce. Stay steady for the rest of the people using Salesforce, and then at some point, that's going to be like a lightning strike, and stuff is going to happen. So it it's, I just want to point out that the three phases isn't like a line that is
Right.
just going up. And so just to be aware. And
No,
and
and
like as a Salesforce professional, that you hear people's frustrations with being with all their data being in the software. One of the things that I think is true is that when you adopt a big SaaS, it's so painful. You never want to go through that again.
right.
Right. So anyone who's part of your organization who remembers what it was like to go from what you had before to what you're doing now is like one of the people in the room is like, no, it's good, we're good, it's fine, it's
Yeah.
working, I don't want to do it.
Even on a personal level, like take any software system that helps you organize, or I use a service that helps me with our home family's budget, right? And what do all of those types of services have? They're like, use it for 30 days for free, because what do they know at the end of 30 days? You don't want to have to take all your data back out of that. Salesforce is like, yeah, sure, go ahead and use it for a while. Like, chances of you wanting to undo this later are pretty slim, because like you said, it's so painful. I had a long day with Salesforce yesterday, because I am not like you, Beth. I'm not an expert when it comes to Salesforce, and just trying to get fields to move around and be where I thought they should be was an entire process of me and perplexity and anything else. And I'd love to hear from you on this. You feel free to let the audience know what you've been working on too as part of this. But you talk to a ton of businesses, you talk to a ton of leaders, and I'd be interested to hear, do you hear people talking about this right now? Are they just, she's like, no. Are they just at the early adoption? Are they even thinking about AI? Is anybody really talking about, hey, what happens when AI completely bypasses our SaaS solution?
So first of all, I love this topic. I loved thinking about all of the downstream effects of, if AI agents are coming for the SaaS industry, then small companies are coming for all big companies, because the only ones who are going to quickly adopt AI agents, from what I'm seeing, are the small, nimble, AI forward companies. And I think it all boils down to people not knowing how to buy. When it comes time to buy, to make a jump, to invest in an alternative solution, they're paralyzed. It's so much easier to be like, we're a Salesforce, organization. We're, Microsoft. I mean, you name big company with, as much as we like to complain about it, they have brand loyalty, or we're just stuck with them, right?
Right.
So the people who are in these positions, it's like it's not like a paradigm shift. It's like burn it all down to the ground and start over. And they're in careers where they're currently reporting out on like relatively decent KPIs, probably using exactly what they have right now. Making that shift is just, I see people not even having a really hard time investing even in like AI training. Six-figure investments are really, really stopping. Yeah, it's tricky.
You back? Yeah, we lost you a little bit there, and can you repeat what you were saying right after AI? Well, it's going in and out a little bit. We were hearing what you're saying about AI training, but we lost the little last part of that. But
That was it. That was really it.
Yeah.
I'd like to
Florida best to join us from a hotel, so we appreciate it. And it's always tough when you're on, public Wi-Fi's and stuff like that. Go ahead, Andy.
Yeah. So as the old school gray hair here, I want to just go back in time and give you a little bit of the history of how SaaS emerged from the development of the internet, and then how it's changing now in response to AI, and how other services out there, including big players like Google, are having to change their entire business model of providing a user interface with access to search and advertisements and other features. How it's changed as a result of the ability of many new entries in the internet space, powered by AI, to do things for you without having to rely on a central aggregator of services like Google or others. So you have these individual agents that can move around. But let's go way back. At the beginning of the internet, there wasn't any service like a portal or a Google or anything like that. And what happened was there were certain places that had computing systems that had proprietary information, and they could make that information available via this communications network, the internet. They could make that available through a file transfer protocol, so where you'd have to connect, with a dial-up modem to that thing, and then you would, communicate through FTP protocol and download some data. You could even download that data, possibly as a .csv file, because Excel existed at that time. Software existed at that time. So there are all these sort of isolated, services out there that had data that was of use to other people around the world. So that was the beginning of this exchange of information. Later, the creation of browsers made it possible for individuals like us to use HTTP requests to gather data from different locations. And then search engines or directories like Yahoo was at the beginning, right? They made it possible for you to know what was even out there. Because now as these things are proliferating, computers are connecting to the internet, what do we have? What's out there? What can I get? Mm-hmm. And so you get this progression, and in the meantime, in the enterprise, there were big business processes that had to be supported. And so sales was one of the big ones. So going back in time, there was a big software package that did contact management. Before that, there was a PC software package that individual salespeople used called ACT. And it kept all your contacts. Oh, great, I can go to my computer and I can see who I talked to and all of that. But then there was a package for enterprises called Siebel CRM. But you had to have that running on big servers in your company. Okay, so big companies could afford to do that. And then along came a little company called Salesforce.com. And Salesforce.com said, no, we don't need to have software on your premises. We're going to architect a system that lets you have software as a service. We're going to deliver it from the cloud. And this is before anybody even used the term cloud. It wasn't cloud computing at that time. It was just, hey, we're on the internet. We're going to give you the entire package of all the CRM processes you need. It was business process standardization around the Salesforce model of opportunity pipeline and leads and opportunities and accounts and managing all those accounts. And that was a real transition away from software. So that was the beginning, really, my awareness of software as a service, and Salesforce was at the lead. Now there's almost, ubiquitous software as a service now. You can access standard specialized services out there that are sitting on servers in the cloud, and you access those. But now, when SaaS was really coming about, it was really all about creating a cleaner interface, a user-centric design, customizable dashboards. A lot of usability was packaged into these softwares as a service. But the emergence of agents is bypassing, disintermediating the user interface of these SaaS services. And that's why we say, hey, I don't want to subscribe to Salesforce's whole process that I have to log into and use their UI for. I just want to access the data that I have in Salesforce right now. Skip that. Let my agent access my SaaS. That implies to me that SaaS, those big models of proprietary data, including your own data, proprietarily hosted in the cloud, it's not going to go away. But the user interface is changing. So agents don't eliminate SaaS. They become SaaS. It's the new model of a new form of UI interacting with these central data servers in the cloud that are specialized. They do something very special, and you want to have access to that process. Sorry for going on so long, but it's kind of an exciting progression in my view.
No, I agree. I think it's like what you're saying about the user experience may change more, and what we may just see, if I understand you, is logging in less to Salesforce, but still having access to Salesforce data, but perhaps seeing it in new and interesting ways that just don't necessarily require you to. And that may have to ultimately may push Salesforce to have to give other pricing models that maybe don't require their user experience or their screens or whatever. And it's more of just like, well, here's the raw stuff. It's still a contact. It's still an object or a custom object, as I learned yesterday. By the way, not that many years ago that I found that at SFDC stood for Salesforce.com. Just want to throw that out there. I don't feel like that's common knowledge. It was not that long ago. I was definitely working at my current company when I found out that that's what that meant. So when you said Salesforce.com, that's what it made me think of. Carl, you were about to say something as well.
Yeah, I just wanted to just riff off what Andy mentioned a little bit, where he was saying how if you look at how talked about a little bit of how pricing is evolving too. It went from direct pricing, buying the software, to software as a service, to usage-based pricing. We're seeing that with AWS. We're seeing that with API calls. But then if everyone can start building their own, essentially SaaS tools, using whatever tools, I think the ones that will stand out will be the ones that can actually help you complete your task. So it isn't how often you use it. It isn't if you use it. It's, hey, is this thing going to actually lead to whatever goals I put it, right? So I will pay for how many bookings this tool has provided for me. I will pay for how many leads this thing provides for me. I will pay for whatever service that I'm expecting that does it better, because even though we all have the capability to build, we're not all going to be building amazing SaaS products. Like there will be some sort of differentiator, and we're probably, just because some people don't want to build or are looking at something else or focus on something else, and they don't want to take the time to do this. Not everyone's just going to build whatever they want. So there will be still a market. Hey, I'm going to pay for this, but instead of me just paying for it every month or whenever I use it, it's, hey, I'm going to pay it if it leads to the outcome that it's helping me. And I think, to me, that's the outcome-based pricing, which can still be, provides that differentiator, but a completely different way to think about it too.
Yeah, I mean, yesterday when I built an N8N and I was building a solution that pushes AI-enriched data into Salesforce, which is the whole reason I was dealing with Salesforce. I'm essentially paying per solution, right, Carl? Like, I'm running it as a test, but every single time I'm running that, there's a cost via Perplexity times like 6, because I'm running 6 different Perplexity things happening at once that are conglomerating data and pulling from different areas before it goes to Salesforce. Every single time I ask for that contact to be updated, I'm paying for that result, which is kind of what I think you're talking about, which also makes sense too as we get into this conversation. We're currently still talking about this, like Andy, you're talking about, or Carl, you're talking about this user experience. If you go back to Greg's, and Beth, I think you're right in terms of where this actually happens in terms of what timing and all that. But he's even pointing out that, hey, that's because you're still thinking about the human in the loop. Take the human out of the loop. This is agents talking to agents, and eventually there is a human who needs to make decisions on it. But there's probably a lot more interplay that is in I can't remember the term, but it's like a cold, windowless, dark room, meaning that the robots, the AI, don't need the lights on. They'll work 24/7. They will continuously enrich this data. And I don't really need to be involved once it's tested and validated as the person in the business, or to your point, 2 or 3 people having 10x, AI agents or operator or something like that. I don't need to be involved now until much later down the line, which means I don't need to see it. If I don't need to see it, doesn't that really start to disrupt some of these SaaS products? Because it may only be the very end of the line, the end of the chain SaaS product that I actually need to see, because that's the end of the line. That's where I actually jump back in as the human and go, we need to make decisions about this. This is what we're doing. But everything before that could just be agents talking to agents and doesn't really involve me seeing it.
And it's also a really different business model. And Carl, I totally want to hear what you say about that. But I want to point out that Salesforce's business model has been to enlarge itself, right? So you mentioned Tableau. That's a Salesforce company, because Tableau existed and Salesforce was like, yeah, nice. That sounds great. We're going to buy you. Now we're going to include that. The
Slack.
most recent one that we saw, yes, Slack. They bought Slack, right? They just bought Respell. Maybe they bought other things too, but we know as Respell users that you can't be a Respell user anymore. You're going to be able to use it within Salesforce. And that, I think, is one of the barriers to them still being something that doesn't have to adjust, because that like just continuing to ingest more capability to like, I don't see that. I'm like pro Salesforce, but pro Salesforce, Salesforce Pro. That's funny. But I think that business model of just bringing more capability into your larger structure is not going to feel personalized enough fairly soon. Carl.
So Beth, I want to ask Junmi about this too, because the Mark Benioff was the CEO of Salesforce, was on, I think, the Big Technology podcast a couple months ago, and the host asked him this exact question. It's like, well, if everyone can make their own software, what's the point of Salesforce? And he mentioned his response to that is like, that's great, but like, who from an enterprise level, who's going to keep all that data? Like, what's the technology that's going to like maintain all that data? And I was like, there's a couple thoughts in my head. I'd love to know what your thought is, Junmi and the rest. But it was like, yeah, who's going to keep your data? Who's going to keep it secure? You're not just going to build this and maintain it yourself. Like, that doesn't make any sense. And he kind of went on that track. So I'm curious to like, yes, we can all build it ourselves, but from an enterprise level, there's a lot more than just a couple yahoos running around like me and an enterprise just building whatever I want and be making fun of Junmi. Hey, look what I built. How you can't stop me, and like that kind of stuff, right?
Right. Well, I think Carl's throwing to me because of the IT department angle here. Yes. I think the vast majority of IT departments will. We all have had our Carls, and usually they're great once we've come to we've come to an agreement. Unfortunately, there's a lot of people who think they're Carls and they're not Carls, and that's where the problem really comes from, right? But yet, to answer your question, Carl, I think this is all part of the larger tech cycle that has happened since the real implementation of giant, warehouse size computers. Right? This is the early days of IBM, and so tech goes through this cycle. You can check it out over the decades. They go from giant centralized servers with external access. The one big machine does all the work and you just access it, right? That's a terminal type of connection. Then it goes to a distributed client server. A lot of the load is offloaded. The lift is on the local machine. This is when the rise of the desktops came by. And then there's less access to whatever the information you want, but the major part of the work is done on the local machine. And it just goes through this cycle. And this is where we're at now. we're starting to see that we have the technology to go back from what was cloud, right? Essentially a centralized, information point, and we just access it, client server, back down to, on the enterprise level, we're going to see, oh, we can implement this here. We can implement this on premises. We can control the data, right? Because proprietary data has become more and more valuable to an enterprise, especially with the advent of AI and the rise of use of AI. People or enterprises are going to want to keep a tighter control of that process and where that data goes. Because if it goes on the internet, that means it's getting scraped. That means it's going to OpenAI, it's going to Microsoft, it's going to Google. All of them are going to grab it. So if you have any value built into the data that you're creating or accumulating, you want to keep that locked down. And we experienced that as recently when N8N became a huge hit. Is one of the things that really pulled them out into the consciousness is that they offer premises or locally hosted version or self-hosted versions of N8N, which is fantastic for an enterprise because now they can run everything in-house. It doesn't have to go out to these other SaaS services out there. It doesn't have to go to Make, doesn't have to go to Zapier. It can all lie within your internal network. That means you can keep the locks on, right? And then, however your internal network's set up. So basically what I see is there's going to be this move away from SaaS for the larger enterprise because they can all run it on premise and run it locally. Not to say they won't use these other services for what they need, but and it does look like Andy's got a counterpoint. So yeah, I'll throw it over to you, Andy. What do you think?
Okay, so imagine now inside the enterprise, you have all these current SaaS systems. You have a financial ERP, you have an automated email marketing system, you have a CRM, you have your e-commerce platform, you've got a business intelligence system. What does N8N do today? It allows an AI intelligence to connect to each one of those in your enterprise. Putting the N8N service itself inside the enterprise, behind the firewall of the enterprise, doesn't change the fact that they're still using all of those current softwares as a service on the outside, and that's what we're
right now, Andy, we're seeing that they're building AI for use within your internal system. We're looking at onboard AI computing, right, as opposed to sending it out to OpenAI or to Claude.
So I understand that you're stopping instance. N8N running on a server inside the enterprise would provide the orchestration of agents that can maneuver across all of the systems in the system stack that exist in the enterprise. What I'm pointing out is that today, many of those systems in the system stack for enterprise are external cloud-hosted services. Now they have good security and they've already solved that problem. So I'm not worried about losing my proprietary information. If I'm using Salesforce, for example, I've already given up on the idea that, oh no, I've got to keep my precious sales leads here inside the organization. I can't let them go to Salesforce. Somebody might steal them out there. No, you've got a partitioned database there that's highly secure, and nobody yet, to my knowledge, has hacked into Salesforce and gotten somebody else's sales leads, right? So I'm just pointing out that the elimination of SaaS doesn't make sense in my mind at the moment. Eventually, it's possible that people like Carl will build a replacement for the CRM system or a replacement for the financial management system, but it's unlikely. The people who've already crafted the very complex interactions of those softwares as a service are going to provide some service. It may not be that you have to pay on an ongoing basis to have a browser-based interface to that, because you're only going to work with your agents inside the organization, and they're going to talk to that service. That's where I think the progression goes, not oh man, this is going to cripple SaaS companies because people are going to start writing their own CRM system for the enterprise.
I think it
Okay,
depends
but
on what level, how big the SaaS company is, right? Because like Salesforce, you're right, probably has a bit of a moat around it, for all the reasons that we've sort of talked about and Beth talked about and stuff like that. But take OpenAI's developer announcement from 2 days ago, and how they're introducing different API tools, response and things like that. No doubt that announcement probably killed either some companies that were already in development with agents, or companies that were thinking about it, or maybe even perhaps had raised money towards it. We don't know, but it's possible that they with that move, that they effectively made some of these smaller SaaS companies who are thinking about how to put, their solution in the middle of the chain, are getting wiped out. And so I don't know, we might be all right in saying that, like, sure, the bigger ones like the Salesforce that are just ingrained in the way that sales companies move marketing, or HubSpot move marketing data as well as sales data, and the interplay of that, they probably have a larger moat around them, because they're well established, and it's going to be more like connecting to them and maybe still using them as the user experience. But that's not to say there's not a lot of smaller SaaS companies that are in jeopardy. Go ahead, Beth.
Or smaller companies that are going to look for a different solution than a traditional SaaS. A year ago,
Sure.
It is time in the age of AI, but a year ago, let's just say, the common phrase that you heard was, AI will not replace your job. Someone using AI will replace your job, right?
Mhm.
AI, it may not be that that the people who are locked into the big SaaS are not going to make that decision to get out of it. But will a nimble company that's using a different solution and therefore has a different economic tech, I don't know, is it a tech debt? I don't know that this qualifies as a tech debt, but you know what I mean, has a cost built in because of the choices that they made 5 years ago that were totally reasonable to make. They may even be reasonable to make now. But we're not just looking at the SaaS company. We're looking at the people who are making the decision to use the SaaS company, and what kind of competition do they bring to the users of the SaaS company, right? So can I don't know, can I sell cars cheaper because my data costs less? That's probably a bad example, but you know what I'm thinking about. Anne, I'm curious.
Exactly. This is an opportunity to be extremely disruptive. And that's the overall AI narrative that I like to latch onto, is here, keep advancing here, keep building onto this so that it doesn't matter. You don't need a Salesforce. I'd love it if we can get to a point where we don't need a Microsoft or a Google or things like that. We'll just build exactly what we need and just access other services that are out there when we need it. So the disruptive nature is kind of what I think a lot of people have been talking about in this latest news cycle about the death of SaaS, is the ability to be extremely disruptive and, come into a point where, or start something that normally you wouldn't really have a good chance at becoming successful at, because of these near monopolies or monopolistic monolith type organizations that have grown over the last 10, 20 years.
What do you think, Anne?
Yeah. Well, one of the things that I hear a lot is, just because we can, does it mean we should? And I think it all boils down to trust. And so one of the questions I had as I was listening to you all, especially Andy, I loved the history lesson. Thank you for that. It put so many things into place for me. Was, with the newcomers and with the AI agents and all the Y Combinator companies, how will they establish trust with their users and their buyers compared with the amount of trust that we have with legacy SaaS platforms, even though we have our beefs with them, right? Like every CRM, we love to hate our CRMs. We love it. We complain and then we buy more. We complain and we buy more. So I've been thinking about that, and like what you mentioned, Brian, about the cold windowless room, one of the things that I see people having a hard time with is any amount of AI where they don't see what is happening. That's why I love reasoning so much, is because it gives people the opportunity to see what's happening in this otherwise black box. And so as I think about agents, it's like there's an additional layer of trust that the companies need to build with the users and the buyers, because they're not known. And we hear all the time about companies that launch and go under and are getting killed by other AI, innovations. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on trust building with the AI agent versus legacy SaaS continuum.
It's a slow build, isn't it? A slow boil, that the trust side of it, because I think we're even so much farther along than where we were a year and a half ago, just with people straight up thinking that if they put a prompt into OpenAI before enterprise, before Teams, before SOC 2 compliance, that anybody else would be able to directly research and pull in their prompts. Like, well, if it goes out to the web, and they're scraping it and they're using it. And I don't know that we certainly have lawsuits out there right now. I just actually heard today that not Chelsea Handler, Sarah Silverman had a lawsuit, and apparently it moved to the next level. It got approved at a judge, and it's going on to the next level. I believe hers is with Meta, with Llama and stuff like that. We do see those stories about, hey, where did you use my data to build and whatever, but we haven't seen a whole lot of stories where people have said, hey, I know I did this in OpenAI, and now I can go OpenAI, prompt it or whatever. So it's like micro trust building, right? Because like we don't really talk about it, but I think generally speaking, I know I talk to sales teams all the time where they're much more comfortable using OpenAI, ChatGPT, Claude for sure, and Perplexity for sure, than where they were a year ago, where some of these same sales teams, I almost want to tell you, wouldn't touch it. They just wouldn't. And now they're much more willing to be like, hey, show us how to use it or whatever, So I don't know if anybody else agrees with that, but I do think it's this micro dosing of trust is the only really way that's worked, which is probably the same way the legacy, we don't think about it that way, but at some point, Salesforce had to get the first 10 people to trust that their data wasn't going to be ripped out of there.
Here's one of there's data trust, but there's also a different form of trust. What I trusted about the large SaaS providers was that by buying into an ecosystem of users and a central developer of the features, functions, and usability of that service, that I would be at the state of the art all the time. One of the key aspects of SaaS is that when they make a feature addition or they make a bug fix, when they push their next release, it goes to every customer, right? So you have this constantly updated software. If you're going to build your own CRM system inside the organization, how long till it becomes broken and or behind the game? But here's the counterpoint to that, is that AI has demonstrated the ability to just look at the feature set, just go actually play with that software that's advancing, and then just duplicate whatever features and functions they add. So the usability, the features, the functions you can maintain parity with the most advanced ones. But I always trusted the CRM system, the ERP system, right, to be at the state of the art. At least, their developers were constantly attempting to catch up to whatever the competition in the SaaS field was for their product range, right? They were matching features and doing all that work. And inside the enterprise, you didn't have to have an engineering team doing that laborious effort to keep up with it. But AI may replace that, because that's one of the places where AI is most proficient, and that is copying, another information technology service.
Well, Andy, when we talk about ERP, right, the whole point of an ERP is to end-to-end integration and single solution, right? That's why enterprise. So we don't have all these individual tools, but it's like, I haven't seen an ERP system that can match from a modular perspective any AI capability in one single field, right? So I know that's the goal for some companies. Like, I hate having to open 50 different tools to do 50 different things, but you're back into that kind of world because each AI tool has its own particular use that it's more useful for. There isn't a one-stop shop for AI that you can use everything. Microsoft Copilot isn't even that, right? Its purpose is very different than what sometimes the marketing is promoted out to be. It has its uses, but it's not like your one-stop shop for AI. There's so many different things that comes with it.
Yeah, and I know, Carl, go ahead, Beth, go ahead. And then I was going to say, Carl, if you want to just, as we're sort of getting to the end here, you wanted to talk a little bit, because we mentioned at the top why Combinator and sort of what they've been saying lately on this as well. But hold that really quick, and Beth, let's go to you first.
Well, I think what they're calling for, what I'm going to say is like a couple levels beyond what they're calling for, but it may be where we're going. We know now that the current AI can take unstructured data and structure it, right? Like super easy. Give it the stuff, it cleans it up, and you can put it in the table boxes that make data Legos and really fun to play with. But what happens when we're like a couple levels beyond this, and now we don't need you to structure the data? Like, you're just structuring it in the way that you are engaging with it. That's scary because humans aren't going to be able to like audit that necessarily. But is that where we're going? Carl, I'm not sure that the Y Combinator was looking for that exactly, but it's looking like like it's on that path. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's the interesting thing too, this whole conversation, like, oh, wait, Greg Isenberg writes that article or writes that post, but it's being reflected in what, like, Y Combinator, for those who don't know, is one of the most well-known, biggest startup incubators in the world, in terms of like, they're providing money for founders, and their 2025 startup call was a huge list of a lot of AI, use cases. And the two ones that I wanted to call out was the AI agents, vertical AI agents, and the B2A, the business to agents, right? It's like they know that agents are going to be prolific and prevalent across the space. So how about businesses that cater to agents specifically, and then vertical agents, technically ones that can, the AI accountant, AI medical biller, like those kind of things. But it's not a leap to be like every single vertical SaaS. They've been talking about it in their podcast last couple of months, in a couple of their episodes. Any vertical SaaS that has a specific use case, you can build a vertical AI that competes in it head to head. Like, you can take a picture of Trello and then upload it to Lovable and like, build this. And then about an hour later, after, or take that code, go to Cursor and do a little vibe coding, and away you go, right? Like, you've built your own system. Like, we've had a couple people who've come back and I've recommended, hey, Carl, can you help us build this app? And I'm like, we could help you, but it'd be really cool. Why don't you go off? Everyone always has their favorite applications. Like, oh, this is what I'm like, take pictures of that and have Lovable or Bold make first concepts, of what you want, and see if it works, because it's getting that good.
But that goes back to Andy's point. I just want to say real quick, I think, Andy, you have a valid point on that about like, or actually, Anne, really, you said it first, like, just because you can doesn't mean you should. But then, Andy, what you were saying about like how quickly before something you build in-house potentially breaks. I know I've watched a whole bunch. I mean, Corbin Brown is somebody on YouTube that talks about this a lot. He builds stuff all the time using either like Cursor or Lovable or whatever tool he's using. But he's really quick because he comes from a dev background. He's like, this is a solution. That doesn't mean it's a deployable, robust solution that you should put into play and everybody should lean on. So I think there's that part of it too. And like, my last thought on this is just, what I think needs to happen, this goes back to what you were saying, Jimmy, I was going to say it after you were talking, is because we know we can build digital twins, because we know that's becoming something that's through NVIDIA and other resources, any company should really be able to build sandbox digital twins of it. And what it's really going to take is leadership. And maybe it's going to be, you know, a central AI person who's leading this, you know, chief AI officer or whatever. There's a few of those out there who is going to orchestrate this and almost go back to that Google model of everybody take 15% of your time or 10% of your time and work on something that's not what you're currently doing in your job. Because everybody is essentially the expert in their niche area of a business, whether it's marketing or sales or finance or whatever it is. To me, what this ultimately is going to look like going forward is having a structure where leadership is on top of it, provides a playground of sorts, a digital twin of something where people can test new ideas, but they can get to the people who know how to, like, finance people are going to best understand what an AI solution is for efficiency or whatever. And you could go across the departments for that. So it's going to be interesting. And I really look forward to, I'm sure it's out there already, but a company who's really thought through this and they're like, no. We're not taking a chance that it's going to ruin our data, that, you know, like they're playing with real live data or whatever. We've got this digital twin. We've got this sandbox environment. People are able to go and play. People are able to come up with new ideas that only they would think of because they're the experts in their field for that area. And then we have a system where we test that out through AI. And we always come back to, could we replace that with AI? Is that a process that we could replace? Does it save us time? Does it save us money? Does it solve some other pain point? And what does that look like? Okay, let's go play. And you can use this much time to go play in this safe place. And then we'll have some sort of system figuring out how it comes back in, or to your point, Andy, like, should it be there just because you can and it solved the problem? Is this like, that's fine if you use that, but we don't need to turn this open or open the floodgates to anybody else. It's really only a solution for you, but hey, it saves 10% of your time. That's an awesome solution internally. You know, so I think that's kind of where this sort of has to be for a company to really think about, how do I future proof against this? It's like, well, set up a system where you can use your expertise in house to figure out where the best advantages are going to be. And maybe that is a fully replaced current SaaS solution that you go, you know what, we don't have to pay that bill anymore because we figured out how to get to the data directly, and it costs us less money and it saves us time along the way.
Right. And I think that you use the phrase, should we replace this with AI? I suspect that the corollary to that will be, have we already replaced this with AI? Right? The people using the systems may very well be using, right? Like it's the cell phone at work because you're not allowed to do the thing on the works computers, like that kind of stuff. And I think we recommend this a lot. Like, have regular conversations community wide. Like, hey, no, like, you're not going to get in trouble. Who's doing stuff now? Because I think that for some companies, there will be more, yes, we've already replaced this. We don't need to do that anymore, because that's not how we're getting the work done. But it will need some sort of amnesty because that may not be company approved. Yep.
Well, listen, as we wrap up today, first of all, thank you, Anne, for coming and joining us and hanging out with us on the show. I know it won't be the only time. And thank you for all. Lots of love inside the chat for Anne being here. Lots of people who already knew who you are, which I'm not surprised about at all, because you're doing amazing things with both She Leads AI and other areas that you see. So make sure you're following Anne. Go follow her on LinkedIn. Go follow her on, I think, TikTok as well, right, Anne? Tomorrow, any other place people should be following you before I pivot here?
No, that's perfect. Yeah. Oh, we have a YouTube channel now, She Leads AI. So awesome. All these things will eventually end up there. So awesome. Yeah, fantastic. Check that out.
Yes, please do. Please go subscribe. Hey, if you like what we're doing, give us a like and subscribe as well. Don't forget, you can go to the website, thedailyAIshow.com, and sign up for our newsletter. That goes out every single Sunday morning. So you can sign up for that. I think we're at issue number 40, I think, or maybe we're already at 41 this week. Beth and Jimmy, you guys have the Sci-Fi AI show. That will be tomorrow live at 1 p.m. Pacific, 4 p.m. Eastern. So you guys will have your next show. Go give that channel That's also a separate YouTube channel like we were talking about yesterday. Get that, a like and a subscribe. Lots of different places for you guys to get amazing AI content and have some fun along the way. Tomorrow, great show coming up. We're going to be doing our Be About It show. That's what we're calling it internally. But really what it is that we saw this amazing, we'll share tomorrow, LinkedIn post where the person doing the LinkedIn post in the video was like, I'm tired of all the examples and all these great things, and you guys are all in love with AI. Be about it. Show me the examples. Show me how you're using it to save time, money, and solve other pain points. So we're taking that up as our chant, our fight here. And so tomorrow we're going to share a whole bunch of different examples of actual ways that we're using and deploying AI that either our clients are using, we're personally using, with our businesses, Daily AI Show, and all the above. So that's coming up tomorrow. It's going to be a really, really good show. And Jude asked me, he said, and Brian on Saturday. Yeah, I'll throw that out there. I've just been starting to do our enhanced conundrum shows. They go out on Saturday. And that's not us. That's kind of a full AI idea. We take the conundrums that I've been doing for a long time inside the newsletter. We use Perplexity to debate both sides of that conundrum. I take that debate and I put it into Google LM, and then you get the outputted podcast. I do not edit it. It's exactly what it is, but it's a lot of fun, and a lot of people are enjoying it, especially on Spotify, because I think it's just listening, right? There's no visuals to it. So Spotify and our podcast platforms are really, really enjoying that as well. So that's all the wonderful things going on. One more show this week. Again, thank you, Anne, for coming and joining us. We really appreciate it. And we will see you guys tomorrow for another great show. Bye, everybody.
Bye, everybody.
Aloha.